Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we have Bulls bounced from the playoffs, the Bears odd draft, and Cubs and White Sox baseball, and a little bit of interesting news about the Blackhawks. All this and more on this episode of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. So, although the season is over, it's never too early to head on over to icehogs.com, pick up a jersey, a hat, and sign up for their email list so you can be prepared when tickets go on sale for next season. So head on over to icehogs.com and tell them Swerski Sports sent you. So, Alex, how have you been, my friend?
I've been pretty good. Really ready to talk on this show, considering what's been going on lately. Certain NFL draft, I'm sure, is a very, very hot topic still here in Chicago. I know it is. A lot of people are still talking about it.
Oh, yeah. We'll have a lot to talk about there.
To say the least.
Yeah. So why don't we jump into let's talk about the Bulls for a hot second. Is not much to say. Is Rajon Rondo was great those first two games and really set the tone for the Bulls in those two wins in Boston. Breaks his thumb, which I'm still confused about. Is how did it happen in the third quarter of game 2? He played all the fourth quarter and then just couldn't play again. I don't understand.
It was very weird because when I got the update about his injury, I had to do 3 double takes. I'm like, wait, what? I watched that whole game. I don't remember him doubling down in pain or getting hurt at any point. I was so confused when it happened.
Yeah, so I have no idea. There's got to be something deeper there. Either this happened off the court, or I don't know. I don't want to start putting a tinfoil hat on, but it just the math doesn't add up as it is right now.
Yeah, it's definitely very odd. And yeah, I don't want to wear the tinfoil hat either, but it does make you think sometimes about the circumstances and where everything was. I don't know. I don't have an answer. And clearly nothing good came of it. The Bulls lost 4 straight, and frankly, I'm not surprised they lost 4 straight after that. I said, watch, that'll happen, and I'm pretty sure a lot of fans felt the same way.
Yeah, and what was even worse is not that they lost 4 straight, but it was just 4 ugly wins, and you saw that the absolute dog doo-doo guard play, or the point guard play, is none of those point guards can play in the NBA.
Well, and especially in the playoffs. I mean, considering when he went down, everyone had a collective sigh knowing the guard depth on this team, especially this point guard depth, knowing that there really isn't any.
Yeah, there's none. It was abysmal. And Dwayne Wade, who is our Hall of Fame guard that was supposed to use his playoff experience to help guide these young players, he looked like crap too.
He was standing around on defense. He was just standing there.
Yeah,
he wasn't doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, he made Doug McDermott look like Oscar Robertson.
Yeah, no kidding. The other thing I wanted to say about Wade is, it's like you saw flashes of him in certain games where he was looking like Dwayne Wade. I think it was game 2 in the second half. He was just drilling everything. In the final game, he was 2 for 10 and scored 2 whole points in a vital game.
He just looked bad, like he just gave up. I hope he opts out. I don't want him here next year.
I don't want him here either. I frankly don't want him here either. If he doesn't opt out and he plays next year, he's going to be making over $23 million. So if I were him, I'd just keep staying around and take all the money, but we certainly don't want that. And you're saying to yourself, wow, I really don't want Dwayne Wade on my team. But considering he's in his mid-30s, past his prime, on a team that really has no direction, it doesn't do you any good.
Absolutely. It doesn't do you any good. And it's just any positive he was supposed to bring to this team, from helping recruit other players to come here, to being an ambassador for this team, to helping the young players, to using his experience. 0 for 4. 0 for 4.
Yep. And again, you'd see some flashes every now and then of that happening, and then they just completely go away. Just completely go away. He was, like you said, 0 for 4. None of that stuff. Every now and then he'd have a good game. Every now and then you'd see him on the sidelines, trying to pump people up. But you never. It was so up and down that he didn't bring you what you wanted from him, but he got what he wanted, and that's a fat paycheck in his mid-30s.
Yeah, he got that final paycheck. It's the young players. They look to Rajon Rondo as their senior leader.
Yeah, and that is it's so funny to say, because you bring in Rajon Rondo, and you're thinking, why are we bringing this pain in the ass here? Why? And he ends up being the one, not only the most popular with the fans, but a popular leader figure. It's like everything was so backwards.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I don't know. It is what it is. But this team got bounced, and part of me wanted them to win just to see what happened. But part of me is just really glad that they just fell completely apart when Rondo got hurt. So everyone just got reminded with a big dose of reality of how bad Garpax are.
Yep, it was a huge reality check. And I was in the same position as you. The first 2 games, I was having fun with it. I figured, you know what? The Hawks got absolutely embarrassed. The beginning of the baseball season can be full of ups and downs, so you might as well have fun with it. But then when it went away, and when they lost Game 5, I just said, just get killed in Game 6. Put us out of our misery. Show how bad this team really is, because they're not good, and management is not good. Nothing is really good on this team. I didn't want them to force a Game 7 and prolong what was pretty much the inevitable at that point. I mean, the attitude changed so much. 2-0, I'm like, wow, we can actually win this. Maybe we can. But let's be real. As soon as they got swept at the United Center in Games 3 and 4, you knew it was over. You knew they weren't winning this series. Let's be real.
Oh, absolutely. The only shocker to me now is I thought after this that Washington would come in and smoke Boston. And Boston won Game 1 today.
Yeah, yes they did. Maybe Washington will make its adjustments. I'm still not counting that out. But even if the Celtics do win this series, I don't see them getting past the Cavs. And I know the Cavs kind of coasted into the playoffs, but part of me thinks they just coasted just to coast. Like they didn't care. They just bring the playoffs. We'll dick around the last month or so of the season and just get in, and then when the playoffs come, we'll turn it on. But, there's still a lot of series left in that. But, the Bulls, they've been eliminated. We know why they're bad. And I'm regretting the inevitable conference of how Garpax are going to be sticking around, how Fred Hoiberg's going to be sticking around, and they're going to keep going on with this so-called plan when there really is no plan to begin with.
Oh, none plan. There's none. This is a wake up one morning and, all right, well, what should we do? Because we stink. Oh, well, let's get younger and more athletic. Well, no, let's sign Dwayne Wade. Oh, good idea. That's better than getting younger and more athletic.
Yeah, younger and more athletic. Yeah.
And we shall see. So there wasn't much on the Blackhawks front. I figured we were going to kind of coast past them this week. But then early right after the last episode is the Blackhawks announced the firing of Mike Kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Which was kind of a shocker because of how close he is to Coach Quenneville. And I get it. He was the lead on the penalty kill, and they were terrible at the penalty kill this year. But I have to believe in my heart of hearts that this was a shot fired by Bowman to Quenneville saying, "This is my team. We're doing things my way because I'm not happy with the results."
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, and that's why I wasn't that surprised. I mean, I thought it might be good to get a few changes around here. After that, nothing major, but some changes. And that with the same reason you said, kind of a statement firing. Because, let's face it, Stan Bowman's never been one to really go out in public and parade around how he was the guy and everything's his way. But after things really didn't go their way this year, I think Stan Bowman kind of realized to himself he needed to put his foot down and establish some boundaries here.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, he's, there's been power struggles between him and Coach Quenneville for a while now. There was talks before that they possibly were going to fire Quenneville, and then Quenneville had a standing job offer with Montreal, which kind of gave him the leverage again. And then Stan Bowman's kind of wrestling it back because although Quenneville's a really good head coach and Hall of Famer and one of the best ever, he's also very stubborn and stuck in his ways, and he does not like giving young guys a chance. And think about the carousel of young players that they've gone through to get where they are right now. And they dumped Daly, and he's been playing really well since they dumped him, and it was just because Quenneville didn't like him.
Yeah, and also there was another few young guys that kind of had that same problem. Obviously, Jeremy Morin is one a lot of people talk about. Now, he's been bouncing around like crazy everywhere, so it's hard to really know about him. But Nick Leddy is one that people bring up a lot. And it was kind of one of those things where I was so irritated with the constant love for Micah Roosevelt all these years. And every year I say there's no way he's going to be back next year, he ends up coming back. It's just kind of a few examples of it.
Yeah, it's I think there's going to be some big changes in the horizon. We also know that Scott Darling is not coming back.
Yep.
They traded away. He was a restricted free agent, so we knew this. This was fact. And we mentioned it before on the show, is that even with the biggest hometown discount he could give, there was no way the Blackhawks were going to be able to fit him under the salary cap. And
right.
So the choices is somehow convince Corey Crawford to waive his no trade clause and move him, which I don't.
Which a lot of people seemed to want to do.
And I've heard rumblings from some people I know that are pretty in the know that was actually a conversation that was had, and it got shut down very quickly by Corey Crawford's camp.
Yeah.
But I don't know how serious it was, or they were just seeing, hey, let's test the waters to see where we're at. But also the rumor was that the negotiations between the agent for Scott Darling and the Blackhawks were nowhere close.
Right.
So they got a third-round draft pick for his rights, not even for him, because they just basically traded away the right to negotiate with him.
And you know what? If you have a guy who's not coming back next year and you know you're not going to fit on your team, you might as well get something out of it than just getting nothing. So I thought it was a very smart move.
I thought so too. I mean, I'm sad to see him go. It's a nice story. He's a really nice guy.
Absolutely.
He was on the show before. That's the reality of life in the salary cap era.
Then you know what? I'm happy for him. The fact that he can be a starting goaltender and have a bigger role, I'm happy for him. I hate to see him go for my team, but for his sake, good for him.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think there's going to be some wholesale changes. I don't know what those are going to be, but I would not be surprised if Brent Seabrook is at least attempted to be moved.
Yeah, with that contract, I have a feeling they're going to at least try something.
I know he has a no trade clause, but they're going to do something because they're not going to go in. They're not going to be complacent.
Right. They're not going to be, let's tear it all down and rebuild, but they're not going to just keep everything as it is. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of financial room to play with to make moves. So something's got to give at some point.
Right.
So we should.
Oh, I have one more question for you on the Hawks.
Uh-huh.
What did you think of them firing Dent?
I'm not shocked at all. The Rockford's really, I think part of that was it was another shot across because Ted Dent is a really well-respected guy around the league.
Yes, he is.
But Rockford has really underperformed the last 2 years.
Yes.
And I know, and he's also been very vocal as of late with some of his criticisms, and he's not a guy to bite his tongue. So he's said some things that the Blackhawks are not giving him what he needs to win in Rockford. And I think Stan Bowman is very clear that he doesn't care if Rockford wins. It's all about developing players for the Blackhawks.
Right.
And I don't know if development was being done there. In the end, Ted Dent was an employee of the Chicago Blackhawks and not an employee of the Rockford Ice Hogs.
Right.
And kind of, for listeners that don't know, is although the Rockford Ice Hogs are the minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks, they are not owned by the Chicago Blackhawks. They are their own franchise. They're owned. They are just they're affiliated, so they've signed a contract to be the minor league team for the Blackhawks. So most of the players are paid by the Blackhawks. They're Blackhawks property. They're brought up and down. But there are several players on the Ice Hogs that are signed to contract with Rockford. So they're never going to get brought up because they're not employees of the Blackhawks. They can't be brought up. A lot of the decisions that are made, so like the head coach is an employee of the Blackhawks, so they cut ties with him and they will be moving on to a new coach, and it's going to be one that is going to be more of a teacher. Ted Dent is a very fiery guy.
Yes, he is.
I can't say this for certain, but I believe that retaliatory fighting was encouraged under him. And
I wouldn't be surprised.
There's been some nasty scuffles that have gone on during his tenure, and I like him. Like, he was great in press conferences. Nothing was ever off limits, and he was and I liked him. But even if they won 6-0, he always looked like he just caught his 14-year-old daughter stealing the car and making out with a boy in the back seat. That's the face he had every time.
Yeah, that's very, very accurate. And I saw some people, like non-Ice Hogs fans, like just strictly Blackhawks fans. For some reason, they were upset about it, and I didn't really understand why. But I don't know. I'm sure Dent will find a job somewhere else. I wouldn't worry too much about him finding a job. So I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is Ted Dent was in the first year, or just finished the first year of a 3-year contract. So it was not it was not unexpected, but it was also, it's not like, I was not surprised, but it was also not like he's a bad coach. He's going to find a job. He's a very smart hockey man. He's well respected around the league. I wouldn't even be surprised if he wound up as an assistant on a major league squad.
Sure.
But he'll find a job pretty quick. But it's the Blackhawks and Stan Bowman are reestablishing dominance in the front office, and they want things their way rather than Coach Quenneville, and they want this to start at the ground up. So the minor league system has to be doing what they want it to do, which is develop players so they're ready when they come up from Rockford to Chicago to play.
Yeah, that's what's nice about Stan Bowman is that he doesn't care about the team's records, whether it's the Ice Hogs or the Indy Fuel or whatever. Like, he couldn't give two craps about it, but that he cares about the development so much. I mean, that's really what's important, and it makes sense why he thinks that way.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see who will be brought in. But I mean, it's not as if Ted Dent was a bad coach. This year was a bad year, but it was. I think there was just some disappointments in what he was bringing developmentally.
Yeah, that's the impression I got, because there were even some people talking about him getting fired right after the Hawks lost, when people said, okay, are there going to be any heads that are going to roll? And some people did bring up Dent with the whole developmental issue at hand, whether for better or for worse. So there were talks about it that I have heard. So it's not like it came to a complete shock to me. I'm like, well, people were talking about that when it did happen.
Yeah. I'm just looking at Derek King, who was brought in as an assistant this season, as a possible takeover candidate, or Vancouver's fired coach Willie Desjardins as possible coach.
For assistant or for Rockford?
For Rockford.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Willie Desjardins was fired like right away.
Yeah, so it's interesting times, and this is not the last of it, and you're going to see some things that fans are shocked by, but I think Stan Bowman is grabbing the reins and saying, I'm very unhappy with the results of the last couple years, and this is how I want things to go. And if it's my neck on the line, and that's the Blackhawks hold people accountable for their actions, and that's, it starts with Rocky Wirtz, is he has McDonough. McDonough is a place, and he has a job he's been hired to do, and he's being held responsible for that. And he hires Stan hires Quenneville. It's everybody in this organization has their responsibility, things that they are in charge of, but they're also held responsible for them. And Stan knows that he is accountable for what this team's record is, and if he's not performing, then he needs to do something, and he's reestablishing his dominance, that if I'm going to get fired, it's going to be because I did things my way and they didn't work out. I'm not going to share power with, or have a power struggle with a head coach.
And I feel like right now with a decent amount of fans, for so long people get how frustrated let me rephrase that. People were getting frustrated at Stan for, quote, not doing anything, and now he's finally doing stuff and people are still really unhappy. I just, at this point, I feel like Stan Bowman knows what's best for this team, and I'm going to trust that he knows what's best for this team. And this is one thing I say over and over with any sports organization. We don't know what goes on behind the scenes.
No, we have
Who knows what the relationships are like,
Yeah,
so that could directly affect something.
Yeah, we hear things and we hear rumors, but nobody really knows unless you're there.
Right.
And but I would not be shocked if Quenneville, whether directly or indirectly, has been put on notice that if things don't change next year, that he's going to be gone. And that has nothing to do with Quenneville's ability to coach. I really feel that there is a shelf life for head coaches in the NHL with a team.
Sure.
Think about most of the top teams, their head coaches are just cannibalized by another team. So you have a run with this team, doesn't work out, and you part ways, and then you go somewhere else, and you bring that team up and play well, and then think about Hitchcock or Laviolette or
Mike Babcock, arguably the best coach in the NHL.
Yeah, so I would not be surprised Quenneville would find a job 14 seconds later, but it would not be the craziest thing is if they brought somebody else in to take this team and move them into another direction.
Right. And again, I'm not saying do that now. I think it'd be silly to do that now. But if a very similar thing does happen next year, then I'd start to teeter towards maybe you gotta kind of shake things up a little bit, because you have your greats. You have your great coaches with every team. But you know what? As the old Tears for Fears song says, nothing ever lasts forever. So, again, not time to talk about that yet, but there will come a day, whether it's next year or in 5 years, when Coach Quenneville, one of the most successful coaches in NHL history, will be let go or will move on from the Blackhawks. It's going to happen at some point. That's just how it works, unless he decides to just retire.
I don't see that happening, but
neither do I.
Big changes are on the horizon, and it'll just be interesting. It's which ones are able to come about and which direction they go.
Right.
So let's move on to a little bit of baseball. The White Sox have had themselves a very good week.
To say the least.
They have, I believe they are, they were in first place, and with their loss today, they are half game out of first place. But they swept the Kansas City Royals, and they just took 2 out of 3 from Detroit. And the one interesting thing is the beginning of the season, it was, I guess it's still the beginning of the season, but through the first several weeks, it was the White Sox dominant pitching performances by their starters, and Avi Garcia carrying the offensive load on his back
with a ridiculous BABIP.
Yeah, so now you're starting to see, Quintana's picking it up. His last 3 starts were very good, but you're seeing the other starters start to fall off and come back to the baseline of where we expect them. And Avi Garcia's bat's cooling down a little bit, but you're starting to see a lot of just home runs by random people, and just watching clips in the games, because I don't watch every White Sox game, but I watch clips here and there, and there's a lot of home runs being hit, but there's nobody on base.
Yeah.
Melky Cabrera, 2-run homer yesterday to win the game. The game before, Todd Frazier, solo home run. Avi Garcia, solo home run. Tim Anderson, 2-run home run. Let's see, the game before that, Avi Garcia, 2-run home run. Lurie Garcia, solo home run. There's nobody on base when these guys are hitting home runs, but this team as a whole is just smacking the ball around out of the park. Yeah, so the White Sox is smacking a lot of home runs, and they're, on the surface scoring a lot of runs, but they're leaving a lot of runners on base, and guys still have low batting averages, and they're not walking a lot. It's one of those things where it's great that they're performing this well. It's got to be exciting for White Sox fans, but this is not a recipe for long-term success. You got to be able to get guys on base consistently. You've got to have guys hitting home runs when there's men on base, and you can't have wild swings of your starters where, Miguel Gonzalez's last start went 8 innings pitched and pitched a 2-hitter, then goes and gets clobbered today. You can't have these wild swings like that. And also, this White Sox team is, but previously with Chris Sale, you didn't worry so much about a long losing streak because you had a guy who was a streak stopper. If you needed somebody to come up with a big win, Chris Sale could do that, or at least give you a quality start and a chance to win. Now it's, you don't have that so much. Is Derek Holland going to be the guy? Is Miguel Gonzalez going to be the guy that you count on to stop a streak if the bats go cold?
Yeah, okay, so I did kind of want to talk about this a little bit. First of all, I think there's a lot of factors into this. We kind of know historically over the past few years, the White Sox do like to get off to decent to good starts and kind of catch people by surprise, and then, they'll kind of fade off. Now, this case is going to be different because while I do maintain my whole idea of White Sox plus no pressure plus no expectations equals decent play, and I do think this White Sox team is not first overall draft pick bad, they're also not this good. The way they're scoring a lot of their runs in bunches one week and then totally getting their bats shut down another week, when you see Derek Holland and Covey and Mike Pelfrey pitching decent, I don't see that keeping up, and you're going to see some really bad stretches because this team is not built to compete. It's a rebuilding team. However, I also can't help but think some of this better play is just because the culture, with no more mopey Robin Ventura, no more Chris Sale and Adam Eaton in the clubhouse being, who they are.
Boners.
Yeah, that is a good way of putting it. I think it does help a little bit, and I think Rick Renteria is a great coach. Like, take away just a baseball in-game manager, I think he's a great coach. So I think that stuff all helps. But at the end of the day, they're not going to be battling for first place in September. And if they are, I will really, really, really be shocked.
Oh, absolutely. I would be stunned. But you're 100% right. Is Ricky Renteria he's a smart baseball man. He's a good teacher, and he's a nice guy to be around. He creates a better atmosphere. And you're right. Is addition by subtraction. Is you lose Chris Sale's production, but you're a better team for it, and you'll be a much better team in the long run. And I understood when the Cubs got rid of Rick Renteria because, Joe Madden is one of those rare opportunities you get to hire a guy like that.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I understand is the Cubs offered Rick Renteria a position where he was a roaming minor league instructor and like kind of gave him like a, he oversees the minor leagues and works with them there as an instructor. And I would have loved for that opportunity because I think he would have been phenomenal just by creating that atmosphere and teaching the young guys and working with the Latin players. I just felt that it would have been great for the Cubs, but I fully understand why he didn't take it, because look where he's at now. Is he's creating a new culture in the South Side.
Yeah, and you know what? I could kind of see this White Sox team, or at least next year's White Sox team, being like that 2014 Cubs team where you're seeing a lot of your key pieces perform well under Rick Renteria. Because you remember the last 2 years before that, especially 2013, the main pieces of the rebuilding core that were up in the big leagues, Castro and Rizzo, were struggling mightily under the coaching of Dale Swaim. And I've said over and over, Dale Swaim, I loathed Dale Swaim with a passion. Hated him, hated him, hated him. And I think that Rick Renteria made a huge difference when he came in the next year and worked with them. So I think you're going to see similar results with the White Sox going forward.
Yeah, and if nothing else, I think he is going to be a world of benefit when Yoan Moncada comes up to the bigs. I think
yeah.
Rick Renteria is going to be like, the like a baseball whisperer to him.
It's a match made in heaven for that scenario. It's a match made in heaven.
So I would not be shocked. I think they made a really great decision, and the White Sox fans have to be very excited. Even the ones that liked Robin Ventura, they have to be really excited because...
Were there any White Sox fans who liked Robin Ventura?
I think there were, but I think it was ones that just waxed nostalgic because they liked him as a player.
Yeah.
And they just never wanted to let go of that. I mean, just think about, if somebody was your favorite player and they became a manager for your team.
Like if Sandberg became the manager of the Cubs, like prophesized by many people.
Yeah, and he would have sucked. There would have been people that just couldn't hate him because they loved him as a player. So I sort of see that, but, there was people that just hated that man's guts.
Oh, yeah.
And they've got to be just doing backflips right now because Rick Renteria has created a better environment. It's just a better environment there. And you just watch it in their play. Is these guys are playing harder, they're playing better, and it's just a much better atmosphere for baseball.
It is, and you know what? With Robin Ventura, to his credit, it didn't really feel like he wanted to be there, but he was making a living there. He was over his head. He had no coaching experience whatsoever, but in typical Uncle Jerry fashion, hire your friends and keep them around for a while because they're your friends, whether they're qualified or not.
Oh, absolutely. And that was the reason. I mean, I think Robin, I really don't think he got fired. It's a possibility because as Rick Hahn grabbed hold of those reins, but I think Robin just didn't want to do it anymore. His heart wasn't in it at all.
Yeah, I don't think it was either. And one thing I'm going to say about Rick Renteria, which I thought was interesting, when he was initially hired, there was some criticism for saying, why didn't the Sox look elsewhere? But then when they made the statement that they were rebuilding, it made a lot more sense. Because though we knew the White Sox had to rebuild, we knew who was running the team and we knew who owned the team, and everyone's thinking, yeah, they're not going to rebuild. The White Sox don't do that. So if you're not going to rebuild, why would you look for or just promote willy-nilly your assistant and not even look at a new manager? But it makes sense. And I have a feeling that though they didn't announce it to the public, they knew towards the end of the 2016 season, they knew they were gearing up for a rebuild.
Oh, yeah. I said it when they hired Rick Renteria. I was telling my friends that are White Sox fans, I was like, there's your next head coach right there. And it's going to be sooner rather than later.
Yeah, some of my Sox fan friends were even happy when they hired Renteria before the big rebuild announcement. So, there you go. A lot of people like it, and for very good reason.
And looking back a little bit is to my point earlier is with all these solo home runs is yesterday's game. Jose Abreu hit 2 solo home runs in the game.
Yep.
They went in 10 innings. They had 6 runs on 3 home runs. It just their team on base percentage is not very good, and their team batting average is not very good. And
no, they don't take a lot of walks at all.
No, and Tim Anderson is a guy that doesn't walk, and he's batting .211.
Yeah.
At least
Yeah.
Kyle Schwarber is not batting very well, but he is his on base percentage is much better than a guy with a .211 batting average you would expect.
Right.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where they are because Cleveland is playing well, and they're starting to. I thought they were going to start pulling away with this division because I expect by the end of the season, Cleveland is going to run away with this division.
Yeah, I think so too.
Barring some sort of catastrophic injuries. But the White Sox are right there right now, so it's going to be interesting to see come June 1st. Not even that far away. Come June 1st to see where we're at. Because if they're still hanging around June 1st, then you just wonder what Rick Hahn is going to do.
Well, I listened to an interview with him on 670 The Score, and they asked him, if you're for some reason in that scenario, what are you going to do? And he says, we're sticking to the plan. But there's the tiny, tiny, tiny part of me that says, well, Rick Hahn will always stick to the plan, but if Kenny Williams, for some odd reason, sneaks into Uncle Jerry's office and convinces him otherwise, Rick Hahn can't tell Jerry Reinsdorf no. He can't.
That's my thinking exactly. Is because Rick Hahn he's going to stay this line. He knows exactly what he needs to do. He's already started down this path. But if Kenny Williams somehow thinks that he can pull a trade and bring in, some ancient veteran that he thinks can help them make it to the wild card spot, I would not be surprised if he pulled that trigger and pulled the trump card on Rick Hahn.
Yeah. That's my only thought. It's not Rick Hahn's idea to do that, but you just don't know with Uncle Jerry. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think they have to worry about that, but I can't help but wonder.
Yeah. So it's good. Yeah, it's going to be something to watch, and it's going to be fun to watch, I think, because they're actually playing some fun baseball. But moving on to the northern side of town.
Already frustrating in this game. Just going to throw that out there. Four runners stranded in 2 innings, already playing from behind.
Frustrating. But, with that said is, this team, it's crazy, I believe they have not lost a single series except for the Pittsburgh one so far.
Yep, that's right.
And so they've only lost 1 series so far, and they're only a game and a half up on Milwaukee. They're only 13-10 right now.
Yeah, and now we're saying only 13-10, like they're playing like last place awful. But this team is so good, it's like your expectations are so unreasonably high that you get frustrated when things don't go perfectly, even though it's not going to go perfectly because it's baseball.
Yeah, it's not that I'm frustrated because of the record. I'm frustrated with the level of play. The bats are pretty cold for the most. I mean, as a whole, you've got a couple guys like Bryant is catching fire, Rizzo starting to hit, Hayward's still hitting, but
Rizzo's hitting.
Yeah, but your pitching is terrible. Your starting pitching is terrible.
They've given up runs in the first inning in almost every game but like 3 or 4.
yeah, it's been bad. I mean, they had a big win yesterday against the Red Sox, 7-4, but they gave up 4 early runs by John Lackey again. It's you don't want to see them giving up 4 runs. And then the game before that, they shut down Boston after the first.
Yep.
But they gave up 5 runs in the first.
Yep. Jake Arrieta really struggled in that first inning.
Yeah. They don't score again. And then, Arrieta didn't pitch that long. He only pitched 4 1/3 innings, but Montgomery, Strop, and Carl Edwards came in there and just pitched shutout relief.
And the bullpen has been fantastic. It's great.
Wade still hasn't given up a earned run.
Yeah, and Hector Rondon has only given up like a few runs, like barely many. Koji Uehara's been fantastic. And it's really amazing how fans will jump on their bullpen after one bad series when if you take that one bad series, they'd probably have the best ERA in baseball as a bullpen.
Yeah, and they bounced back from that just abysmal first series against the Pirates. And it was not a great series against the Pirates that they just finished up, but they won 2 out of 3. And they crushed the Pirates in that first game.
Yeah, that was fun.
And combined for that same day is the Cubs or the White Sox won 12-1 and Cubs won 14-3. So I think that might be like a record for most runs scored combined for a city in baseball.
Well, right now it's my biggest thing with these Cubs games. They need to stop making a habit of playing from behind. They're playing from behind in almost every single game they play. And a lot of the times they come back, and they have the capability of coming back. But you can't make that a habit.
No,
it's got to stop.
And just think about it is, I don't have the stats to back it up, but I would put money down that as a whole, baseball teams have a higher batting average with the lead than they do from behind. And part of it is you've got a lot of big boppers there, and they want to drive in every run with one swing. And
right,
it's a pressure thing. Is your pitchers pitch better when they've got the lead. Your batters, they don't have pressure. Like, we got the lead. Let me just make contact. You play better when you have the lead, and that was something that the Cubs last year did. Is they jumped out to leads.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Here's a stat for you right now, and I'm going to have you play a little guessing game right here. How many Cubs runs that were surrendered by Cubs pitching, I should say, how many runs do you think the Cubs pitching has given up in the first inning this year so far? If you were to guess a number.
Does that include today?
Yes.
Okay, so that's 24 games.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say 30.
Very close, 28.
Okay. I was going to say, I bet it's right around one a game or a little over 1 a game.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny that most often these runs that are getting scored in the first inning are results of home runs. Seems like they're giving up bombs in the first inning. It's very strange. And what also makes this so frustrating, they give up these early runs. And not only do they give up these early runs, they have to labor through the first inning. And as a result of that, they don't make it past the 6th. So that means you have to put all this pressure on the bullpen. The bullpen has been amazing, but you put this much pressure on them for all these games, it's going to wear them down, and that's not going to be good down the stretch. Yes,
Yeah.
It's early, but you just can't make a habit of this.
Yeah, I don't have the full stats in here, but I don't believe any Cubs starter has pitched 7 innings or more this season.
John Lester pitched a 7-inning shutout against the Pirates, only to lose because that was the one series the bullpen did not perform in well. But when it comes to 7 innings, other than that John Lester one, I can't think of another one. No, Jake Arrieta did it in St. Louis. That's the other one I remember. I honestly cannot tell you if there was another time.
Yeah, I mean, this week is Anderson pitched 6 against the Pirates.
And you don't
Hendricks
expect
pitched,
him to go deep.
No, not at all. Hendricks went 6 against the Pirates. Lester went 5 2/3 against the Pirates. Arrieta goes 4 1/3 against the Red Sox. Lackey went 6 yesterday. So yeah, it's they're just not pitching deep. You've great. The bullpen has been pitching really well lately, and if you have the lead going to the 9th, you've got to feel really confident that it's going to get shut down, and you're gonna get the save.
Right. And Wade Davis is as reliable as you can get. We are blessed to have Wade Davis. We really are. Now, with all this analysis of the Cubs so far, I don't want to sound like an ungrateful, quote-unquote, bandwagon meatball who expects perfection. I don't. But I'm just telling you what I see so far. And, you're not going to start out 26-6. That start last year was outrageous. I get that. But it seems like the problems we're seeing right now from a starting pitching perspective are consistent. You see the same stuff every day. Digging holes, high pitch counts in the first inning, creating a lot of pressure to have to play catch up throughout the game. And you don't want that to be a thing all season long.
Yeah, absolutely. And too many home runs. And it's
a lot of stranded guys on base. The last few games, a lot of stranded guys on base. They've already stranded 4 in 2 innings.
Yeah, and ultimately all you have to do is win your division. That's all that matters, because you then don't have to play in that 1-game wild card. And
right.
This is a very, very winnable division. Cincinnati is already starting to, after that hot start, is already starting to fall apart. Pittsburgh only plays well. I mean, if you take away the wins against the Cubs, this Pittsburgh team is terrible.
And they lost Starling Marte for the postseason and for 80 games.
Yeah, so Milwaukee, I just don't see them being lasting. And St. Louis, it's a miracle they're 12-12.
They should be several games under 500, but they've gone through a stretch of typical Cardinal 9th inning win miracle stuff with them.
Or the 10th inning grand slam the other day.
Yeah, they were down 4-2 with 1 strike to go, and they tie the game in like typical old Cardinals fashion.
So yeah, I just don't see anybody. I mean, it's funny. Is a lot of times is the beginning of the season. It's still wide open for the most part, but this season is really not like that. Washington's running away with the East. The Mets are in last place in the East.
They're a dumpster fire, and they might lose Syndergaard for a while.
Yeah, and I mean, Philadelphia is not a good team. They're another one that's just playing over their heads right now, but you're going to see them sink.
Well, they're already sinking. Did you hear about last night? Back-to-back home runs surrendered to tie the game, and then they lost.
Yeah, I mean, they're just not a good team. They might be worst team in baseball. So you're going to see them just bottom out. Atlanta is rebuilding. They're going to be good in a couple years, but not this year.
No.
Miami's got a puncher's chance, but not to win the division, but to make a wild card.
They don't have the pitching to really be a huge force.
No, but they got the bats.
Yeah, definitely.
So I just don't see anybody challenging Washington. I don't see anybody challenging the Cubs. And the West is San Francisco is bad. And
very bad.
And I think Bumgarner, what did they just say? He's going to be out 3 to 4 months?
Yeah, because of that dirt bike incident or whatever.
So he's out for a long time, and you can't recoup that. San Diego is not a good team.
They're awful.
And it's Colorado's a very good team. They're a very good team. Arizona's a good team. Dodgers are a good team. So you have 3 good teams in that division. So honestly, my opinion is you're going to see both wild cards come out of that division.
I agree. I agree. Now that the Mets are where they are, I would agree.
In the AL West, is Houston's going to run away with that. I don't see anybody else. Maybe Texas comes back a little bit.
So much for the Mariners.
Yeah, Mariners, no good. Oakland, no good. Angels, high price. They'll put on a run at some point, but it'll be way too little, way too late.
Yeah, they're not very good, honestly, other than Trout.
Yeah, in Central, you got to expect Cleveland to win that by 10 games.
It should be. If they stay healthy, they should win that because, like, the Tigers still have some talent, but not enough to keep up with the Indians' youth.
Yeah, and they just, watch them play against the White Sox. You can't give up 7 runs to the White Sox in multiple games and expect to compete with Cleveland. And then the East is going to be interesting because New York is playing crazy well.
Watch out for those Yankees.
And I don't think they're that good. I think they'll come back to earth, but I think Baltimore is very good and Boston is very good. But other than that, it's for the most part you just can pick out who's going to win already, and we're not even in May.
Yep. Yeah, I know. A lot of things can change, no doubt about it. No predictions right now are set in stone, but I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head with all those predictions right there, at least the ones I agree with. So, the Cubs right now, they're going to open a series in Philadelphia, and usually you'd see that and say, easy peasy, but you know how the Cubs get with some of these bad teams at times. It's not always easy.
And it's gonna be cold this week. I'm going to the game Tuesday. My wife is from Philadelphia, so she's a big Phillies fan. So I got tickets for Tuesday night's game, and it's gonna be like during the day. It's gonna be a high of like 54.
Yes.
So it's gonna be cold at night, and it's gonna be, some low scoring games.
Yeah. Those are terrible because I've played baseball in cold weather. It sucks.
Yeah, when you make contact with the ball, it hurts.
Especially when you're using a metal bat.
Yeah, and it's just, it's not conducive. And so, you lose a lot of that benefit of just being a dominant team because the weather neutralizes a lot of it.
Yeah, and people come into Wrigley Field or they welcome the Cubs into their ballpark. And I don't know how much of a factor this is, them being the world champs, but you got to think, when teams play them, they really want to play their best baseball. They want to beat the defending champs.
Yeah, and I don't think the Phillies are very good at all, but that weather is just going to be, it's going to be a doozy.
Yeah, and there's always one team a year when the Cubs are good. There's always that one mediocre bad team that always gives them fits. Like last year, the Braves really gave them a tough time. The year before that, in 2015, the Phillies, they were like 2-5 against the Phillies, and the Phillies in 2015 were wretchedly terrible.
Yeah, this year it's the Pirates.
Yeah, and we dominated them last year.
Yeah, one thing about this, the way it's shaping up the league, and teams starting to looking like they'll win the division easily and not a lot of big races, is that's got to be bad for the White Sox that are going to try to do a bunch of deadline flips with Frazier and Holland and Robertson and so on and so forth. Is the less teams that are in it come trade deadline, the less likely that they're going to be able to, to make a good quality deal.
Right. And like we keep saying, there's still time, but you want to get on the right trend of where you need to be. You want to build a lot of trade value in some spots, and you want to also, I don't want to say tank because no one is playing to lose, no matter how good or bad you are. You don't play to lose. But let's face it, you don't really want to have a mediocre to solid record in the first year of a rebuild when you want to keep getting as many good assets as you can, because, being mediocre really doesn't get you anywhere. Luckily, the Sox have a good amount of prospects already, but you want to keep stockpiling them.
Yeah, and they're going to want to flip Frazier. They're going to want to flip Robertson. They're going to want to flip Holland. They're going to want to flip, if they can, Shields. They're going to want to flip everybody they can, because A, these are spots that younger guys can come in, and B, is if they can get something for nothing, then why not? It's like free draft picks.
Right,
Or
exactly.
free prospects, sorry.
Exactly, yeah. Stockpile as much as you can get. And one thing that we've learned on the north side with rebuilding, even just some little throw-ins can turn out to be gems, so take what you can get and make the most of it.
Yep, absolutely. Because you know what? If you get a throw-in guy and the star of the trade and the throw-in guy both are successful, then it's always a good problem to have too many good players. It's a good problem.
It's a great problem. If you're saying, I don't know where we're going to put this and this because we have so much great this, that is the most wonderful problem to have ever. Because not only do you have a lot of depth, but you also have some options to trade for more places that you do need more depth or do need a position.
So I have a question for you.
Yes.
How long do Jed and Theo wait before they start getting a little panicky about the starting pitching and try to make a trade for a starting pitcher?
I'm going to go into early June. I think they give him another solid month. And if things don't start improving a little bit, and if maybe Kyle Hendricks is showing some inconsistent velocity, if John Lackey continues to kind of show what we're kind of fearing right now and that he is indeed washed up, if Jake Arrieta continues his inconsistency for another month, I think it's going to be around June where they kind of determine where they are. And if they're not happy with where they are, then they might start seriously discussing some trades. So yeah, a month, a little over, somewhere in early June is how long I give them.
Yeah, I think they're already plotting things right now. One, because they are expecting Jake Arrieta to be gone, especially after the way he's pitching now. You can't pay this guy for a long-term contract with the way he's kind of gone downhill since the Bob Gibson era.
Yeah, no, I'm really, really, really convinced that he is not going to be a Cub after this year. And you know what? I say, thanks for what you did. You did some great things. You helped get us a World Series. Now you can go away. I don't hate him. I'm not suddenly saying, oh, he sucks, he's the worst. But, with his performance, with some of a decline, you got to just be ready to let him go.
Yeah, and I think that they're fully ready to let him go, and I think they're looking, instead of trying to sign somebody for big dollars in the offseason, is to make a trade, and it's, I think they're going to try to do it sooner rather than later to get that arm into this bullpen, into the starting rotation sooner rather than later.
And that's what I keep saying about, Ian Happ and Candelario. And I get people like them and want to see them play for the Cubs, but I just keep saying, you're going to see them play in the big leagues, just not with the Cubs, because they are going to be parts of trades.
Yeah, I keep hearing people say, well, let Ian Happ stay with the Cubs and then trade Javi Baez. But the problem is that while I think Javi Baez could net you more in return, Ian Happ is not nearly the defensive player that Javi Baez is. There's people that don't even know if Ian Happ is a MLB ready fielder.
Yeah, he's a lot of shakiness and inconsistency in the field with him.
So he might end up being a DH.
Kind of like Dan Vogelbach is probably going to be a DH.
Yeah, so it's, you've got a guy who, you're in the National League is you need a guy that's going to be able to play the field. And think about how important the Cubs' defensive play was last year in their success. And if you bring in a shaky infielder and to replace a very good infielder, it's not going to help your pitchers. It's not going to help your cause.
That, and really, the main thing with me is he's still never proven anything in the big leagues, and it's really hard to count spring training because anyone can have a good spring training, and he's clearly doing great in the minors. Don't get me wrong. I think he's got a ton of talent, and I think he could be a really good big league player. But he hasn't played in an actual big league game yet, so don't be so quick to just trade him away, trade Baez away, and just bring up Ian Happ willy-nilly, because you don't have the room to experiment. You're not rebuilding anymore. You're a built, established team that's going to be looking to continue to contend for a long time. It's not like you're going out and saying, well, we'll see how he does, because a few years ago you could when you were rebuilding and you had nothing to lose. Now you're playing to win, and you're not going to make such bold, brash moves like that.
Absolutely. And you're right. I think Ian Happ is going to be a very good baseball player. ... in the American League.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch the Cubs play and going forward, and hopefully some of these pitching performances can turn around, because they can't keep going like this, because eventually they're going to get a starting pitcher injured, and things could really bottom out at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So moving forward, looking at the Cubs, you hope the starting pitching gets better. And once that happens, I think, they'll be firing on all cylinders. I'm just tired of watching them having to play from behind every single game.
Oh, absolutely. So let's move on to the thing I'm sure that everybody that's tuned into this episode is really dying to talk about. And that would be this weekend's NFL draft. Yeah.
Particularly our team.
Particularly. I have a lot of mixed feelings and mixed thoughts about what happened. I want to hear your thoughts first.
Okay. Let's see. Let's sum it up here. I don't understand the thought process. I don't, personally. I thought they were going to go in another direction. They did not. They have what they have. Ryan Pace isn't just doing this willy-nilly. He clearly has an idea of what he wants to do. He clearly has a plan. He clearly has an outlook. So I gotta trust that his outlook, his expertise, his staff, whether it's scouting, coaching, developing, or maybe some of the veteran players on the team, will successfully bring forth these new draftees, especially the one big one, which we will talk about. But I still am trying to see what his thought process was with some of these decisions. Even though I know he knows what's best. Like I said, we don't know what goes on in the background. We don't know some of the advanced scouting. I stand by this statement in saying Pace clearly sees and knows something that the fans don't know. And he went with his gut. And he's proud of going with his gut because he's happy with the results he got. I just wish I understood a little better. because some of it just does not make sense to me.
Yeah, here is, before we discuss the actual picks, here are some of my thoughts. First of all, I did admire the stones he had, where from the reports I'm reading is that the only two people in Hallis Hall that knew the Bears were going to go after Mitch Trubisky were Ryan Pace and George McCaskey.
Yeah.
That the coaching staff did not know.
Right, like John Fox had no idea.
John Fox did not know. This was... So when you saw all these reports linking them, even Mitch Trubisky was shocked that the Bears picked him.
Yeah, he had no idea.
This was out of the blue. So and apparently this has been the decision that was made 6 weeks ago. They said, this is our guy. We are going to go after him. George McCaskey signed off on it, and Ryan Pace was like, this is what I'm doing. That's the first thing. Is I got to admire that he said, this is what we're doing, and I'm going to do it. This is the guy I've identified, and I'm going to make sure I get the guy I identified and not have to go, well, I'm going to go with the next best option. Second of all is Ryan Pace he went up to the line that said, this is the line where I can be safe and probably hold on to my job, Gar Pack style. I'm following this path, or I can just go off and I'm going to hitch my star to this wagon, and I'm either going to ride off in glory, or I'm going to just completely implode. And he has basically gone that direction where it's all or nothing here. It's Mitch Trubisky is going to define Ryan Pace, and he's either going to be the reason that we all love Ryan Pace, or he's going to be the reason why he loses his job.
Yeah, because as everyone is saying, he's either going to die with a statue at Soldier Field, or he's going to die knowing that he was run out of town by 2 million angry Bears fans with torches and pitchforks with another unsuccessful rebuild.
So,
he put his career on the line with this draft.
Absolutely. And, it's funny because you go back and you hear some of the things he said, and he told the absolute truth in what he said, but all of us had this bias that, I guess, trying to be less vague about. So he said some things like, we have a lot of, with this draft, we draft high in every round, and we have a lot of ammunition to make this team better, and I'm going to use that ammunition. And we as Bears fans all made the assumption all together that they were going to take a defensive stud and then have a lot of picks. And so he didn't lie, but we all saw what he said and took it and put it in the frame of reference that we had. And all along, he's like, we're going to trade for Mitch Trubisky.
Right, and it's almost like you say to yourself, we thought it was going to be more conservative, knowing that the Bears want to play it safe because they haven't been good in a long time, and taking a risk is, well, risky. And that's what a lot of us thought. And instead of doing that, he put his absolute balls to the wall and put his career on the line with this pick.
Yeah.
And it caught a lot of us off guard.
Oh, I was making the Home Alone face for a good 20 minutes. The thing is that, I mean, I have criticisms of this draft, but he is, at the end of the day, most Bears fans either liked Jay Cutler or it was anybody but Cutler. And for the anybody but Cutler people you said, okay, well, we got rid of Cutler and we are going with Mike Glennon. And everyone said, well, anybody but Cutler and Glennon.
Right.
Okay, well, how about Mitch Trubisky? the very first quarterback drafted in this draft. And not him either. So the anybody but Cutler people, they are sort of in the hot seat right now because clearly it's not anybody but Cutler. They must, like, at this point, those people have to either poop or get off the pot and say, no, it's actually, I can't just say anybody because I'm clearly not happy with anybody. You have to say who it is that you want as quarterback. And it sounds like you want Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady.
And as great as that would be, that's not possible. What I think is just what makes this weird to me, just talking about Trubisky, none of the other picks, just about Trubisky. You get Trubisky in here, you draft a young quarterback. Okay, you drafted him second overall, and you traded a bunch of picks to get this. And this was after we gave $18 million guaranteed to Glennon. To me, that's just a little odd. I know what the idea is. I know the idea is to kind of do the develop and that the Glennon thing is going to be a bridge, but it still just seems very, very strange to me because I can't help but wonder what Glennon feels right now. How does he feel about all this? Like, he knows that he's just going to be here for a temporary time, so it seems weird to me. I don't know if that's just how I feel, but I mean, what do you think?
I think, based on what Ryan Pace said, that Glennon was brought in here before this decision was made for Trubisky. That I wanted to identify a quarterback that was going to stabilize this boat, and they said the best option we have as of right now is Mike Glennon. And they signed him to the deal that they needed to get him done. And I know everyone's like, oh, these throwing out these numbers, but realistically, it's a 1-year deal with a $2 million buyout. So after he was signed, he was already named starting quarterback. He is the starter. I don't think Mitch Trubisky is ready to start.
As most people would agree.
Mike Glennon is the starter. And best case scenario for the Bears is that he looks good when he does get into play, and Mike Glennon has a good year. Because that puts you in the boat of, well, if we either have a really good backup, or you start getting into the territory where you can trade. Think about what the Vikings gave up to draft or to trade for what's his face from the Eagles?
Stafford.
No,
or Bradford, not Stafford. Bradford.
They traded a first and a fourth, or first and a third. It was a first rounder and a middle pick for basically 1 year of Sam Bradford. Now, if you're the Bears, if Mike Glennon looks good, and then you're confident Mitch Trubisky is the guy, you can trade him next year for, a good amount of picks, and then you can start building because you have your quarterback.
Right, and I understand that part of the plan. I understand that aspect, but even if they talked to Glennon about that, I guess my only thing is, to me, it has to feel weird for Glennon. Like, I don't know. To me, it just... I get it, but at the same time, it's just very unorthodox to do that kind of thing, at least for the Bears. We've never seen them do that before, so this is just all very new to us.
Yeah, it is, and I do feel bad for Glennon because it's not looking like he has a long shelf life here in Chicago, but the thing is on the one hand, he's got to be pretty happy because he's got the opportunity to be handed a starting quarterback position in the NFL, and he's going to be auditioning for 31 other teams.
Yes, he is.
And
yes, he is.
He's under contract, so no matter what happens, he's got $18 million coming in the bank.
Yeah, that's pretty nice.
If he plays well, even if it's a moot point, because Trubisky is going to be the quarterback of the future, is if you play well, then that the Bears are going to just trade you or pay you, and because there's it's no obligation that they have to get rid of him if he's good, is you're going to get this $45 million. That's a lot of money, and as much as it sucks to if you're a competitive guy like that, is to be stuck as a backup, 45 million reasons to just be okay with it.
Right. That's very true. I mean, I know some people look at the situation a different way, whether it's glass half full, glass half empty. So that's why I just kind of wonder about it. But you're definitely right about all that stuff. You know what? I really have to give credit to both Glennon and Trubisky especially. They sound like they are just so ready to work and do what it takes to be successful. Their attitude has been something that I don't think a lot of people are talking enough about. We're seeing some really positive things, especially from Trubisky. Like, the guy seems so blessed and like on cloud nine to be here, and he just sounds so ready to make things work. And when you have a good attitude like that and you're ready to do that, that's a good thing to have. It really is.
Who I feel bad for is Mark Sanchez and Connor Shaw, because now they really just have no room to do anything. And one of them's not going to make the squad.
Well, I guess Mark Sanchez, if he does make the squad and he doesn't really play, he can get his money without really having to do anything.
He just shows up with a coffee and, and slippers.
Yep, exactly.
So, I mean, here's the thing, is if the Bears went into this draft and they didn't sign Glennon and they didn't have anybody, it really forced the Bears' hand. Correct?
Yeah.
That means, so if the Bears, everybody knew they'd be drafting a quarterback, and anybody that wanted one of these couple of quarterbacks, they were going to have to trade up ahead of the Bears. And it was going to really drive up the prices, and the Bears would have been on the spot. But signing Mike Glennon gave Ryan Pace all the ammunition to have the best poker face ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess now we could talk about the actual individual picks. So first off is the Bears went from 3 to 2 to move up to trade or to draft Mitch Trubisky. Now, I think everybody and their mother is just mostly mad because of the compensation we had to give to the 49ers. And I've heard actual national writers say that the 49ers fleeced them, but I've gone through every accepted point system for NFL picks, and it's basically it was actually in the Bears' favor until they threw into that 2018 pick. That was the one that tipped it over into the favor of the 49ers. So really, it was a pretty fair trade. It's just between 3 and 2, there's a big point difference between those two picks. And I believe it was Adam Schefter reported that Cleveland absolutely wanted Mitch Trubisky, and they were trying to trade into that number 2 spot to draft him. And they probably had the ammunition to do it. Is they have a lot of picks.
Yeah, when you talk about it more and you analyze it more and you kind of look past everything, it makes more sense. Is it still very risky? God, yeah. They could have gone a much safer route, but they didn't. But when the trade first happened, I turned into a meatball and I was screaming and swearing at the TV in pure disgust and anger. And then, as time moved on, I said, well, I understand this, I understand that, I understand there's a plan, I understand how this benefits what. I mean, I'm still not 100% crazy about it, but it does make more sense when you break it down in that sense.
Yeah, and think about it this way: is all right. Let's say they drafted either Jamal Adams or Solomon Thomas. Okay, and then they go the rest of the draft, keep their picks, and pick, let's say, even solid guys at those rounds where you give the Bears a good draft grade. What's their record next season?
Probably not great.
Let's give them 8-8. Is that a fair?
I'd say that's the very highest I'd go. I'd probably go more 7-9,
Okay.
6-10, but
So-
8-8 will go as the very highest.
All right, well, let's go 7-9. So they go 7-9 next
Okay.
year. And where do they draft then? 15th?
Yeah,
Somewhere
right in
around
the
there?
middle of the pack.
Yeah, so they're going to be 14, 15, somewhere around there. And do they have any shot to get the top quarterback?
Nope.
So you're at 3 now. You have the ammunition to move up to 2 by trading some mid-round picks. You get the quarterback. What if Ryan Pace is correct? And here's the two options: is Ryan Pace is correct, and Mitch Trubisky is our quarterback of the future, and we got our guy. Then you know what? You build around him, and we have something that Chicago has never had, is like our quarterback. If that's the case, or Ryan Pace is terrible at his job, and we're back at this again next year high. It's one of those things. Is you don't have like Brian Pace said, is you don't have a lot of opportunities to draft this high in the draft, and you have to utilize the system to make sure you never get back there.
Yeah. Right. And again, that makes sense.
So, am I happy about giving up all these picks? No, not particularly. Do I think that somebody would have traded up to number 2 and leapfrogged the Bears to take him? That's something we'll never know. Is Adam Schefter believes that somebody was going to, but that doesn't necessarily mean that was going to happen. And Ryan Pace decided that this was the Bears' chance to get a franchise quarterback of the future, and if he ends up being a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, is anybody going to care about trading a 3rd and a 4th round pick for him?
No.
Especially considering over the past 10 years who we've drafted in the 3rd and 4th rounds.
Yeah, exactly. Here's a few scenarios I played out in my head, and I usually don't like playing hypotheticals because hypotheticals will never ever come true because you can't change the past. But my reaction would have been very different if they would have taken Trubisky at number 3 without any trades, because I would have said, I don't love that we didn't take a defensive piece at the time, but I would have been like, okay, future quarterback, nothing else was lost. I think what was the most aggravating was the fact that we lost those picks in a very deep draft full of a bunch of players that we need, because that's the biggest thing with the Bears. The Bears are full of holes, and this draft is very deep, and you want to really plug a lot of those holes as you can. But at the same time, if Ryan Pace was really set on this guy, then I guess he had to do it. And I'm still not thrilled that he had to do it. And I still am not 100% sure why he's so high on Trubisky. But he clearly is. He clearly knows something we don't. So, I guess with Trubisky, I say, okay, here's our guy. He's here. We'll be behind him. Let's hope it works out for our sake, for our fandom's sake, and let's trust the process. Because we'll forever be unhappy with this until the actual results show.
Yep.
So, there's in the end, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah, and now here's my opinion. So I know we're gonna get angry listenership saying why are you happy about this? And no, I'm happy that our general manager had the balls to say, this is the guy that's going to lead that we've acknowledged, because a lot of Bears fans, I would say the vast majority, have said the Bears franchise just has a terrible history of quarterbacks. And everybody agrees that the quarterback is the most important position in the NFL. So we have a general manager that said, I'm going to solve this problem first. I'm going to solve the problem that is solving the most important position. Everything else will fit in later. We have a desperate need of having a top cornerback. But you know what? We've got like 75 cornerbacks on the roster, and I think they're hoping that one of the young ones will just pan out and be okay. We were terrible at safety last year. All right, so we signed an aging but good safety, and we've moved a player from cornerback to safety, and we're hoping that we can stabilize the position that way. Our top pick from last year has a whole year under his belt and an off season, and we're expecting him to make big plays. Our very first big free agent signing is going to be healthy, so we're hoping he can just plug in on the other side and be able to get more pressure on the quarterback. Our starting linebackers will be healthy and drug-free, hopefully, so we'll have those. So I think they're thinking that those things are sort of just by nature going to resolve a little bit on those things, rather than necessitating drafting somebody high. But I'm happy that Ryan Pace has said, I'm going to try to solve the biggest issue that we have, is no quarterback.
Right, and you talked about Bears fans' reaction with our analysis, and I'm just going to say, I'm not telling you to jump for joy. I'm not telling you to be happy everything is rainbows and sunshine. I'm not telling you that at all. What I'm saying is, we have no choice but to hope for the best. There's no other option. We can't go back in time. We can't change things. We can't talk to Ryan Pace. That's not how it works.
There's no mulligans.
To hope. Right, exactly. We have to hope for the best. We have to have some faith.
Yeah, and I'm going to stand by it. I'm not enamored by this class of quarterbacks. I still think that I don't think Deshaun Watson's going to be that great in the NFL. I just think he's not a good decision. He's not a good at reading defenses. He doesn't make good decisions. Throws way too many interceptions. Pat Mahomes is got an absolute missile of an arm, but again, I think he's very Brett Favre-like. Pat Mahomes 15, 20 years ago would have been a superstar everyone would have loved, but in the 2017 NFL he's going to make fans have hissy fits with some of his decisions. He's very Pat Mahomes is very Jay Cutler-ish, where he's going to tease you with the talent he has, and I don't think he's ever going to materialize. DeShone Kizer, if he's fully committed to playing, and that's a lot of people had question marks whether or not DeShone Kizer really has love for the game and the ability to, the want to be successful. If he has that, I think he's going to be pretty good, because he's a very talented kid. He's got the, some athletic ability. He's got a very strong arm. But here's Mitch Trubisky, and here's what my scouting report was on him, and I'm just going to, we talked about it a couple weeks ago, but he extends plays in the pocket with his athleticism. He has a really great completion percentage. He was almost 70% in college, or last year. He actually reads progressions, so he'll read the progressions across the field. Doesn't just go with the hot receiver. He actually reads defenses and reads the progressions. He doesn't have the arm of Deshaun Kaiser or Pat Mahomes, but he's definitely got an NFL arm. And when he runs, he's got some decent speed on him. He's going to be able to run for first downs, kind of like Aaron Rodgers, where he's not going to be Michael Vick, but if that defense gives him the room, he's going to run 10 yards for a first down. But he's only a shotgun quarterback, didn't play under center at all, and that's a big, people think, well, just go take the snap, and it's actually a big transition. The way you see the field, the receiving the ball, the timing of things, the way you drop back, how your release goes. There's a lot that's different between going a shotgun and under the center. I think he needs a little bit of better pocket awareness. He doesn't feel the pressure as well as he should. He needs to learn to throw the ball away if there's nothing there. He'll float too many passes that in the NFL are going to get picked off. He's got nice velocity on there. Then that's more of just a cleaning some things up. But the big issue is that he's only a 1-year starter. There's not a lot of tape on him. I still think he's a boomer bust pick. If he is at his peak, you're going to see Matt Stafford at his best. You're going to see the 2016 Matt Stafford. And that's a pretty darn good quarterback.
Very productive.
But I think what Ryan Pace saw is that he has the best accuracy and decision-making skills in this draft. 30 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. And the thing is that a longtime NFL scout told me when I was talking to him is that when you are evaluating quarterbacks, is they can have all these skills and all these talents, but you know what? Your completion percentage doesn't get better in the NFL. So if you can't complete passes in college, you're probably not going to complete passes in the NFL. And Trubisky had almost a 70% completion percentage.
Oh, there you go. And I'm sure that a lot of people are going to be working with him over the season. So, like I said, all we can do is see what happens.
Yeah. And then, the Bears started with their this is where my concerns come in, is they had 5 total players that they picked. And of the last 4, 3 of the 4 are from tiny schools. And it's not to say you can't have a talented guy from a small school. It's just to be able to hit on 3 small school picks in one season. It starts to get to be, are you thinking you're the smartest guy in the room?
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I was watching the draft with some friends, like I said, and we listened to the second pick, which was Shaheen, and Shaheen, however you say it. I never heard of him, and I never heard of the school he went to. I'm like, first of all, why a tight end? A, B, who the heck is this guy? And C, where the heck did this guy go? Like, I knew nothing about him.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of Bears fans' things. And as soon as he wasn't on my radar either, and I scout a lot of players, but he's from Ashland. I had to look it up. It's in Ohio.
We had to look it up too. I told my friend, I'm like, could you look that up? I don't even know what Ashland is. I couldn't even tell you where it was.
At least their last pick was from Kutztown. I lived in Philadelphia, so I'm like, I know of Kutztown, but Ashland I'd never heard of. And I immediately, as soon as I was like, because they don't have a 3rd round pick, so I can just start watching film of this guy, and I couldn't find very much film, but I started watching it, and he's 6'6", 280 pounds. I'm like, okay, so they drafted I started getting mad. I'm like, they drafted a blocking tight end in the 2nd round. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I think I need a drink. So I started watching
D2.
I started watching the tape, and I was like, wait a minute, this guy's not a blocking tight end at all. I'm like, this is Jason Witten.
Yeah, that's one of the reports I read. He's like, not a very good blocker. And I'm like, why? Just why?
Yeah, so I did my scouting on him, and he's a giant of a man. He's an amazing athlete for the size he is. He was a very good basketball player, which a lot of times translates well to the NFL. Within his catch radius, he catches the ball very well, and he adjusts his body well to be able to catch the ball. So he's got good understanding of his body and the ability to catch. But for a man his size, his catching radius is not that big. You look at a guy, like Odell Beckham, and his catch radius is like, 9 foot high, 10 feet wide. But Adam Shaheen's catch radius is not that big, but once it's in there, he's catching that ball. He's not a very good blocker either, even at the D2 level. He's going to need to get a lot stronger. But I can see why he's really intriguing, and I think your offensive ability on passing downs he's going to be utilized right away, and I think he could develop into a Jason Witten type. My big concern with him is there was so many decent tight ends in this draft. Think Jake Butt went in the 5th round, and that I thought they could have addressed this later, but they're that high on him. And I've heard some unnamed scouts that rave about Adam Shaheen, and they were hoping that nobody else heard about him. I think honestly he could develop into a Jason Witten type and make this, or a Greg Olson type, and make this team better on offense. So we shall see.
The one thing I will say is, like, our tight end depth is pretty non-existent. And as good as Zach Miller is decently, he's not like an all-star tight end, and he's injury prone. So it's okay to add in a little more tight end depth. I'm not upset at that by any means. I was just kind of surprised with who they got. But again, hey, if he works out, he works out. It'd be great.
Their next pick was Eddie Jackson, who was the one lone big football school player that they chose, because North Carolina is a big school, but not a big football program. So Alabama is the one football school that they took a player from. And he's a safety, 6 foot, 201 pounds. Pros on him, he's got some nice speed. He played in an NFL-style defense against top competition in the SEC. He's a willing tackler. He'll stick his head in there. And he's big enough, his size-wise, he's big enough to cover tight ends, but he's plenty fast enough and rangy enough to play sideline to sideline as a free safety. But the cons I have on him are he takes really poor angles, and he is what I call a dragger downer. So when he goes in, he just takes a guy and just drags him down rather than actually tackling or making a big hit. And I think this is going to be an important special teams cog and backup. I don't really see him legitimately challenging for a starting spot, at least not this year by any stretch. But I think he's got experience as a returner, and with his speed and size, I think he's going to get a lot of playing time as a special teamer, and I think he's going to come up big for special teams.
I watched his highlights, and I said, wow, that kid could really be a beast. My one main concern is injury history. And I thought to myself, another injury-riddled player, but I look at what he can do, and he's pretty darn good. Let's face it, he is pretty darn good. And if he's healthy, great pick by Ryan Pace.
Next is this one. I was really shocked to see them make this pick, but
so was I.
I'm not gonna lie, is the homer in me is so excited to see him take the field. Is Tariq Cohen from North Carolina A&T running back, 5'6", 179 pounds. Pros on him: they do not call him the human joystick for no reason. He starts and stops on a dime. His cuts are as seamless and sharp from any direction. When he go to try to tackle him, he's like a greased pig to bring down. He's dynamic in the passing game, and for his size, he's got a really good lower body strength. As you just can't, a few years, maybe longer than that, when we had Garrett Wolf, we had these hopes and visions. But Garrett Wolf is a strong breeze knocked him over. Is Tariq Cohen has got a very powerful lower body, and he will carry some defenders. And in last season, he had 4 touchdown runs of over 80 yards. 4 touchdowns over 80 yards. But he's got a few fumble issues, and he's not willing to go down even when there's nothing there, which in the NFL is going to lead to some peanut punches. He's a little too willing to go off script. He's going to need to learn to trust the holes that his offensive line has. But he's going to be a phenomenal compliment to Jordan Howard, and he should be a great scat back and passing downs. And the minute I saw him, I just went, that's Darren Sproles 2.0.
And that's what a lot of people are saying. And at first I'm like, why take a running back? Because we're set at running back. But looked at the tape, looked at the comparisons, looked at his scouting report, looked at all that stuff, and I said, wow, that is a really valuable asset right there. If you can have that running back depth with Howard and him, and let's say you keep Langford as a third back kind of guy, that's pretty good. That is pretty good to have.
I mean, and if you think about it, is some of the comparable is Ryan Pace is trying to build a pattern on offense. He's establishing his quarterback. He's giving them weapons. I know our wide receiver depth is thin, but he added a big safety valve tight end that can catch, and they've got a solid running game in place, and he added a change of pace back that can catch screen passes out of the backfield dynamically. And Jordan Howard, that was one area where he struggled was his passing game, but this kid, when he catches the ball, if there's not somebody already there on top of him, I watched some plays where he had a little bit of space on a screen pass. And remember when Tom Brady did that little juke move and made Urlacher look dumb?
Yes.
This guy did that to a guy that had him dead to rights. In a game, the guy had him dead to rights, and Tariq Cohen stopped on a dime and went the other direction, and it was almost like somebody went into the film and cut out a bunch of frames, and then you didn't see the ones where he slowed down before he made the stop and had to take a little bit of time to accelerate the other direction. He just stopped and went the other direction, and the other guy just tackled the air. And
that's pretty awesome.
And I was like, you give that guy a tiny bit of room, and the other thing is he's little, and those little guys, as change of pace is as a defensive lineman, is you're gearing up for a certain type of guy, and when you send a change of pace in there, especially a little guy, is they get lost in the shuffle, and you don't know where they're at, and it's odd to say, but you actually lose track of a littler guy, and the change of pace can be very dynamic in the NFL. So the last pick the Bears had was Jordan Morgan out of Kutztown, offensive lineman, 6'3", 309. He was another guy I didn't know anything about, so I started watching tape on him. And remember when the Bears coaching staff was chosen to coach the Senior Bowl? And a lot of people were like, these guys, they get to work with these players there and have insider information from working with them and seeing how they respond to coaching and how they get better over the week and such and such. And Jordan Morgan was a guy that the Bears coached at the Senior Bowl. He was voted the top defense or offensive lineman in Division II. He's got really good arm length, over almost 35 inches. He absolutely dominated guys in Division II. When he goes to block at the second level, like linebackers and safeties and such, he's hustles. He goes out there, hustles. The cons I had on him are limited competition. He needs to work on his footwork a little bit. He's not bad. His strength is not bad, but he's going to need to get stronger to go from D2 to NFL. And he could struggle early versus speed rushers if they move him out to offensive tackle. But he did really, really well at the Senior Bowl and Senior Bowl practice. Really well. And easily he could be the backup to either guard spot. But I think if this plays out well, and I'm very high on Jordan Morgan. I mean, this is a little bit of a long shot here, but I would not be shocked to see the best 5 Bears offensive linemen be Kyle Long, Josh Sitton, Hronis Grasu, Cody Whitehair, and Jordan Morgan. If you really want to put your best offensive lineman out there at the same time, is you put Kyle Long at left tackle, Josh Sitton at left guard, Hronis Grasu at center, Cody Whitehair at right guard, and Jordan Morgan as right tackle. And I think you could have a really solid offensive line there.
Yeah, adding that kind of depth to that line, I think it's a good, smart thing to do. As good as our guards are and the middle is, well, we've seen some injury problems in there as good as they are, so having the depth is never a bad thing.
No, not at all. So we had a couple listeners that asked me what I thought of the draft. And honestly, it's a mixed bag. I would not have. I'm not that happy that they drafted a ton of small school players, just because to go from a small school to the NFL is a big adjustment in strength and speed and skill of the other players. It's a learning curve, and you need some of these guys to be impacts right away. But I think Ryan Pace, honest to goodness, did best player available. Is they picked those guys, and there's still holes to fill on this team, but I honestly, if it's going to be, the linchpin is going to be Mitch Trubisky, because I think Adam Shaheen is going to be an impact on offense from the get-go. I don't know how much playing time he'll get as long as Zach Miller is healthy, but he's going to be a cog. Eddie Jackson is going to be an important piece on special teams right away. Tariq Cohen is going to be a change of base back, and you're going to see him, he's going to get several touches a game, and he's going to be an important as a change of pace. And I think Jordan Morgan is going to either work himself into a really, really good backup that makes you feel good if an injury happens, or he's going to move him into a starting role. So I think this could be a very good draft, but it's going to be Mitch Trubisky is going to be that linchpin.
Yeah, it's risky, it's unorthodox, it's unexpected, but when it comes to the actual results, we won't know until they actually play. Because there's been a lot of people grading the draft, and people grade drafts all the time. A lot of people giving it D's and F's or C minuses. And I get it to the extent of where it was very risky, very unorthodox. You traded away a lot of picks for Trubisky. But, you got to see them play first to really make a final judgment. Because if Trubisky turns out to be a stud, then this is going to turn out to be one of the most historically great drafts that the Bears have ever had. If not, it's going to get F's across the board in a few years. And that's where the patience has to come in.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if Jordan Morgan is a starter on the offensive line. If Trubisky is terrible, this whole draft is going to be predicated by how Mitch Trubisky does. And I'm so glad you brought up draft grades, because the Bears are just getting lambasted. I mean, I think the highest I've seen them get is a C minus. But
yeah, I've never seen them get anything above that.
I just want my point I wanted to make to Bears fans is, who cares what national writers are giving as a grade before they've seen any of these players on the field? This may be a terrible draft. This may be an abysmal draft that gets Ryan Pace fired. I'm not saying it's not. But just because a guy who has no stake in this game, they're just a writer, and they made the decision that this is a bad draft, does not make it so. And I wanted to pull up, I took draft grades after the 2013 draft. So I figured that was not so far back, but it was still pretty recent. But enough time has passed to have a good understanding of what that draft looked like in hindsight. One of the people, the same people who gave the Bears a D in this draft, saying it was awful and so on and so forth. He gave the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2013 an A on their draft, saying, if this draft is any indication, the new regime in Jacksonville will accomplish some great things. Offensive tackle Luke Jokel is a stud, and safety John Cyprien easily could have been round 1. Pencil in cornerback Dwayne Gratz as a starter as well. Best of all, the additions of wide receiver Ace Sanders and running back, wide receiver, quarterback, kick returner, shoelace boycotter Denard Robinson will allow the Jacksonville Jaguars to be a lot more creative on offense. Grade A. That
was good for them. That really was.
No, it was bad for them. They said it was going to be good, but Luke Jokel was injury-ridden and is no longer on the team.
Wait, who are you talking about?
Jacksonville. This was from their 20.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about now. I'm sorry. I totally missed that.
No. So I'm just going, is the same guy who said the Bears have an awful draft pick this year, gave an A.
Yeah,
A to
I'm sorry. I totally misunderstood
yeah,
that.
so he gave Jacksonville an A because, and Luke Jokel's bad, Cyprien bad, Dwayne Gratz, meh, Ace Sanders bad, and Denard Robinson bad. It was a terrible draft. And people got...
Yeah, no. You're 2013, right?
Your whole regime got fired. So, you gave them an A. That should have been an F.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Here's another gem that this guy had was he was lambasting the Jets draft that year, but it said, but of course the spotlight will shine brightest on quarterback Geno Smith.
Yeah.
So, here's another good one. Until we know more about Chip Kelly's plans, let's just chalk Matt Barkley pickup to finding a potential first-round quarterback at number 98. Here's another great quote of him from that same year. Running back Le'Veon Bell fits the Pittsburgh offense, but may not have warranted being picked at 48.
Yeah, he's not like one of the most productive running backs in the league right now or anything.
Yeah, they gave the 49ers an A grade for Vance McDonald, Quentin Patton, Eric Reed, Tank Carradine, Corey Lemonnier, and Marcus Lattimore. They said, then the real doozy, quarterback Mike Glennon in round 3. Glennon is a long, long way from being an NFL starter. But I give the Buccaneers an A grade because of their trade for Darrelle Revis. So that's great. So all I'm trying to say is, Bears fans, is don't be mad about what the national media is writing about this, because if Mitch Trubisky does turn out to be what Ryan Pace thinks he is, then we'll be the ones laughing with our, all of our playoff appearances. And if Mitch Trubisky stinks, then Ryan Pace is a boob and he's going to get fired.
And those Fs will be justified.
Yeah. So I'm just saying it does not matter until they're on the field, until we see what they have.
It's so funny how you brought up that Jaguars draft. I thought you were talking about this year, because I thought this year they did some pretty smart things. But yeah, that one you were talking about, 2013, right? That was not good.
It was not a good one. This year, I thought, they had a solid pick this year. I'm not high on Cam Robinson, but if you get him in the second, that's a pretty solid second round pick. Leonard Fournette is going to be a stud. So you've got some decent picks there in Jacksonville this year, but you've got a better regime. I mean, you've got a whole new staff in there, so
it makes sense for what they're doing.
Yeah. And they've already got a pretty solid defense. Jacksonville's going to make some noise this year.
Yeah, even though I feel like we say that every single year.
It's going to be Blake Bortles that sinks this team or not. And if this team is bad with Blake Bortles, next year they're going to go all in on a quarterback.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'm sure that we're going to get a lot of comments about the Bears, and we'll address them next week. But is there anything else you wanted to talk about this week, Alex?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything. The thing I want to talk about most was this draft and how I felt, and though there is uncertainty and though there was confusion and though I'm still not fully understanding of everything that went down, I'm happy to say that I am going to take this as, let's make this work. That's all you can do right now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep saying that over and over to people. And I'll tell you, I was mad. First round, I was livid.
Yeah, me too.
For like 30 minutes afterwards. Unbelievably livid.
And
I was ranting on Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah, and my ultimate take home is this. I was telling a friend who was on the ledge about this is, I said, all right, I've calmed myself down, but this Trubisky pick is either going to be something we look back on and be like, oh my God, I can't believe we were mad about this. This is our savior of our franchise. Or it's going to lead to Ryan Pace getting fired faster. And, rather than, there's like Jerry Angelo dragged around for a long time after he should have been fired. This will get Ryan Pace fired faster if Trubisky is awful, because there's a lot of guys that they could have brought in to help this team right now. So I just said, hey, listen, this is going to cause this team to either solve the quarterback need once and for all, or not for all, but for a long time, or it's going to get Ryan Pace fired and we'll get a whole new regime in there that hopefully does better. So
I think what's causing a lot of confusion and some of us feeling off guard is the timing of all this. It's not Pace's first draft, and it's not like he's just started to filter everything out. This is his third year as Bears general manager, and he's the kind of guy who doesn't go out and tell you what their overall plan is, not like a Theo Epstein. So this is why it's catching a lot of us off guard. At least that's my theory, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, he threw us all for a loop, and it's, we go out there and see, and it's hard for us to swallow, because we all wanted a guy who was going to go in there and be a changer game one, and Mitch Trubisky is not. He's not going to be the game one starter. It's going to be Mike Glennon. So we're not even going to see this guy in action until either an injury happens or till year two.
Right. And another thing that I'm at least glad to see, a lot of the times I get very frustrated with the Bears fan base, but I will at least acknowledge this. The anger over the Trubisky thing and losing those picks with this deep draft, at least it tells me that most people understand that the quarterback is not the sole issue. Because that's one thing I kind of perceived from a lot of Bears fans over the years, is that they think we were just one good quarterback away. That's not the case, and it seems like most people understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the thing is, there's only so many quarterbacks in the NFL that are solid. There really is. And you've got to find one. And if Trubisky turns out to be the guy, we're all going to be like, we traded a couple of mid-round draft picks for him. The 49ers are so stupid with their terrible play. If he ends up being terrible, then we've already set back enough, and those couple of draft picks aren't going to fix that situation.
Yep, exactly. And at the end of the day, we just want to see a good team again. And it's getting to the point where it feels like the Cubs of old, where we're tired of waiting to see, even though 100 years compared to 30 years is really nothing, but in the grand scheme of things, seeing all these other teams succeed and all this greatness, and the Bears really not being great for a long time, you just want to see it happen again.
Yeah.
And I get it. We all do.
Yep. You'd love to see the Bears become the Patriots.
Yeah, who wouldn't want to become the Patriots at this point?
Yeah, I mean, we would all love to draft the best quarterback in the history in the 6th round, but that's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. One more thing I wanted to say is I saw the Bears' crop of undrafted players, and I was expecting more offensive linemen and defensive linemen, and they really didn't. They drafted a basketball player who doesn't have football experience. I think it's just to see what he can do as a tight end. But hold on, I'm loading it right now. But they drafted a guy. He's just a basketball player. And they want to see what he can do as a tight end, as an athlete. And why aren't you loading? Why aren't you loading? Oh well, they didn't sign as many players as I expected them to, and not at the positions that I expected them to. So it was a little bit of a shocker because I thought that they would want to bring in more offensive linemen to try to solidify that tackle position, by a diamond in the rough. Defensive linemen because they're a little thin on the interior. And they brought in a wide receiver. So it was a little bit of a shocker for me.
Yeah.
I agree.
Here we go.
Tanner Gentry, wide receiver out of Wyoming. Freddie Stevenson, a fullback out of Florida State. Rashad Coward, defensive tackle out of Old Dominion. Dugo Joseph, offensive lineman out of Florida International. Andy Phillips, kicker out of Utah. Joel Bougnan, running back out of Northern Illinois. They've signed some more since I started the show. Mitchell Kirsch, offensive lineman out of James Madison. Jajon Seals, out of wide receiver out of Oklahoma State. Deshaun Smith, tight end out of LSU. Mark Spellman. I think. Sorry, this website, every time I scroll down, a thing pops up. Mark Spellman, a center guard from Illinois State, and then the basketball player. So, we'll see how those stick out in camp.
Yeah, well, we shall see.
All right, well, I think this was a pretty good show, and what about you, Alex?
Yeah, I thought this was a real good show. I mean, we had so much to talk about, a lot of good stuff. Because when we get into the midsummer, like before camp, it's going to hit a zone where we're really just talking mainly baseball. So,
Yeah, pretty much. So I know next week we'll be responding to people mad either way about the Bears. But I welcome that because it just means that the fan base hasn't just withered off and died. They're still here and they're still passionate.
Yeah, they still care. They still want to win, as we all do. But, it'll be good to get other people's opinions and kind of analyze them. We don't want to go out there and just be those a-holes who just rip other fans' opinions. It's good that we can analyze them and maybe see points where we agree or disagree, and, maybe we learn from each other. I always think that in sports, when you have a conversation with another fan, it opens other opinions.
Yep, absolutely. So thank you guys so much for listening, and please make sure if you have questions, comments, concerns, you hit us up on social media, Twitter, at ShyFanPat1, or at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Subscribe on however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. share with your friends, and thank you guys so much for listening. Until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on the plains.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.